I want to spend a little bit of time talking about materials when we talk about packaging design. Before we do that, though, uh, let's talk a little bit about what the function of packaging is. Now, obviously, you want something that's going to contain your product, carry it, protect it, dispense, preserve, measure, communicate, display, and we'll be talking about that. Branding is very huge in packaging design, which we'll also talk more about. Build up the contents, disguise, promote, and also innovate. There's a lot of really fascinating work going into packaging design using all the latest technology and materials. And we'll talk about some of the more ingenious ways of innovating packaging design going forward. But first, you have to understand when we talk about packaging, we're going to be talking about the consumer facing packaging. So that's the stuff that you would see in your store. But you have to understand this is made in the factory, and then your individual packages are all kind of put into boxes. So maybe you have 20, 40, 60 in a cardboard box. Those are then loaded up onto pallets, and then those can go into containers for transit across oceans. And then kind of repeat the process in reverse once you get wherever you're going. So the pallet comes off, and then the larger containers are broken down till you get the ultimate package that you see at the store as a consumer. So understanding all the various stages in this distribution is important, but we're really going to be focusing on the consumer end of things here. Now, talking about materials, these are the five basic categories we talk about: wood, paper and board, cardboard, glass, metals, and plastics. And you can see in this grid the typical pack forms that you would see that you guys are familiar with, and also the various properties that are associated with each. Now, some work better for other things. Some materials work better than others for various products. Obviously, if you're shipping something liquid, you wouldn't want to try and package it in cardboard. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. So the function comes into play. Also, the cost of production also comes into play. But I just want to show you some examples of each of these. Now, wood, one of its principal properties is it's durable and it offers you great protection. So for packing crates that have to travel long distance, you can see the kind of brute force of the kind of wooden cartons there. But also there's some really innovative work being done with wood in packaging design. So there you can see with the fragrance container or bottle for, obviously it's called wood, on the lower right there. Other examples of combining wood with other materials. Here's a candle design. And some more interesting containers as well. One of the things you see a lot when wood is used, there's been a move to really go towards more sustainable woods like bamboo, which you can see in the container for the sunglasses there. So wood is a very common product that or material that you see in product and packaging today. Paper and board, this is probably what we're most familiar with. If you go into any grocery store, the vast majority of the packaging you see in the store is going to be what we call paperboard, which is kind of that thinner cardboard. And this we're going to be talking about, and you're going to be actually doing a template like you see in the upper right-hand corner. That being said, paperboard and cardboard doesn't need to be cheap. You can see some really beautiful packaging, elegant packaging being done with cardboard as well. So again, here's corrugated cardboard. So we primarily probably know that from like moving boxes like you see on the right there. But there's some really kind of interesting and creative usage of corrugated cardboard in packaging design. So there you can see kind of a unique packaging for a dozen eggs. How practical that is, I couldn't tell you, but you're going to see a lot more usages for it, especially with modern technology too. You can see the cardboard on the upper left there. Now with the digital technology we have where you're able to score cardboard digitally and create these really unique shapes for it. One trend you see, and we'll talk about current trends going forward here, this kind of idea of origami in design, being able to fold things together to create packaging, and that you're going to see come up again and again. Again, some other examples of really interesting solutions using cardboard as packaging. Again, more packaging for eggs. Now, we are unable to do this. I have tried. In most design programs that offer packaging, one of the go-to assignments to give students is to design a carrier for a dozen eggs. And usually the test of the packaging comes at some point where you go to a high space and drop your packaging off the second story and see how well your eggs survive. I've tried to do that at Fullerton. You will be unsurprised to find out administration is not terribly keen on me dropping dozens of eggs off the side of the art building. So we won't be doing egg packaging in this class, but here you can see some more innovative solutions. And we'll talk about different trends. Here's some more fun solutions for coffee carriers. And again, this is really a trend that comes out of Japan and out of Asia, these kind of more anime-inspired packaging designs there you can see. Glass is another material that's used a lot in packaging design. Now you'll see glass come in different colors. You'll see the clear, the amber, and kind of the dark green. Where you see the amber and the dark green a lot is anything that has alcohol in it. And the reason for that is alcohol in beverages reacts with light, not just sunlight, but also even artificial store light, and can change the taste of it. And so that's why, especially with beers and wines, you'll see when they use glass bottles, they'll go for the amber or the dark green because it keeps the taste from being affected from the light. Other examples of packaging using glass. And again, especially now with digital design tools, you're able to come up with some really unique shapes and ways of manufacture and working with glass. So here's some really beautiful glass vessels that have been designed for vodka in this case. This is really great. And we talk about sustainability as well here. This is a candle design where you see it in the store off on the left. And then once you buy it, when you take the lid off, the lid actually becomes a stand for it. So it's a way to turn the packaging into either part of the product or part of the display of the product. Talking about metal comes in a variety of forms, either something harder and more rigid or something as flimsy as foil. So all of these qualify as metals. So even if it's aluminum foil or kind of the foil you see candy wrapped in. Here you can see some packaging done with more rigid types of metals, and these aluminum bottles are kind of all the rage. That's one of the trends in beverage design now. You'll see that especially with a lot of soft drinks and beers as well, going to the aluminum bottles. But again, you can get quite creative with it as well. And again, all the digital design tools really help with that now. So there you can see. I'm just realizing I put a lot of vodka in here. I don't know if that's saying anything, but probably not. But there you can see some really kind of creative Smirnoff packaging that's based on kind of the Russian nesting doll design. And here you can see some really crazy designs. Obviously, cost becomes a factor in this as well, but I would love to see this kind of faceted Coke can. Hopefully at some point we'll see something like that. Then we get to plastics, and there's a lot of different types of plastic, and I'm not going to go over all the details on here. But whenever you get anything in plastic packaging, especially like beverage bottles or whatnot, look on the bottom or look somewhere on there. You will see one of these symbols off to the left. You can see the kind of triangle recycle symbol with the number in it. That will tell you what type of plastic is being used and how it can be recycled. And like I said, I'm not going to go over each of these. I'll just talk about some of the more common ones here. Oh, sorry. And again, plastic, similar to metal, it could be something as thin and flimsy as the plastic you see bread come in if you go to the grocery store. Or you can get the plastics that are much thicker and more rigid, like the blister packs, which I talked about in the history, which are like bulletproof and nearly impossible to open if you've ever been stuck trying to do that. A couple of the more common types of plastic, this is called PET, or polyethylene terephthalate. Why this is important is This really led to the revolutionary of ready-to-eat meals that you see in the grocery store. The problem with the advent of the microwaves is you couldn't put metal in there; it would short the microwave out. But all the plastics that were available at the time would melt in the microwave oven. So unless you wanted to eat your food with a healthy helping of melted plastic over the top of it, you'd have to transfer all your food to a plate or something in order to microwave it. PET, certain types of PET or special grades of it, are actually designed so they can go into the microwave. And so once this came on the market, that's when you see the real explosion in ready-to-eat meals that you can see in the grocery store to this day. Polystyrene is another type of plastic. You see in the kind of packing peanuts that oftentimes you'll see products come in when they're shipped, especially if you order online. Or you see these polystyrene clamshells that used to be used a lot in fast food packaging. The problem with polystyrene is it does not biodegrade, which means if it goes into a landfill, it's there for centuries. And so there's been a real move to try and phase out polystyrene just because it is so bad for the environment. That being said, plastic is still a very common material to be used in packaging design, and there you can see that kind of scored effect that I showed you in the cardboard being used on plastic as well, to make a sturdier plastic a little bit more pliable and more natural shaped. And again, different usages with package, especially with modern technology. We can shape it into almost any form that you can think of. Some designs smarter than others. I don't know really if there's a market for selling individual eggs, but there you can see a packaging concept for doing that as well. Now, here's the thing about plastic, and we have to talk about this. And I mentioned in the previous lecture, sustainability is really kind of one of the driving ideas behind modern packaging. The really sad fact of the matter is a vast majority of plastic ends up getting washed into the world's oceans. Now, cardboard and glass and metal over time, will break down and degrade. Plastic is a different story, and what happens is a vast amount of plastic washes into the world's oceans. And what doesn't end up washing up on local beaches ends up entering the currents of around the earth, and more often than not, it will ultimately get deposited in the Pacific Ocean. And because of the currents, there's two gyres, one in the eastern Pacific and one in the western Pacific. A gyre is basically like a little vortex that all this plastic gets sucked into, and it's created two massive garbage patches, one off the coast of California, about 500 miles off between California and Hawaii, one off the coast of Japan. Now, this isn't really an island of trash, like you couldn't sail a boat into it and get off and walk on it. Because what happens is the effect of sun and the effect of the salt water and the plastic will make it get brittle and break down into smaller pieces. But it never totally goes away, and a lot of it breaks down into very small, either almost like a plastic confetti or even microscopic sizes. So if you did sail a boat into the eastern garbage patch, if you were to take out a net, like say a pool skimmer net, and drag it through the water, when you pulled it up, you would see it would just be filled with microscopic or tiny little pieces of plastic that had broken down. And the problem is that enters the food stream because the fish of the ocean will eat it or ingest it, and that will end up in our food chain when you go to the store to buy fish. So it's a real problem with plastic in packaging design. That's one of the reasons behind a lot of states and cities move to ban those single-serve shopping bags that you can get at, say, the grocery store or Rite Aid or CVS or something. Those are notorious for being just entering the environment. They blow around easily. They end up draining out into the ocean, and it's a huge problem. And even for plastic that doesn't end up in the ocean, even for plastic that ends up in landfills, the trash that gets taken out at our curbs every day. Look at this chart here, and you can see how long it takes some of this stuff to actually break down. That plastic ring that holds your six-pack of sodas, that can take 400 years in a landfill to finally break down. A styrofoam cup, 50 years. Let's not even talk about disposable diapers, 450 years. So this will come up increasingly as we talk more about packaging in the class, but working more towards sustainability, materials that will actually break down in the environment and won't add it to the kind of environmental catastrophe we've been building to for the last 50 years. So that's just an overview of some of the more common materials we use in packaging design. And for our projects in class, most of the things we're going to be designing are probably going to be based in cardboard or paper cardboard.